Dial M for Murder wasn't just a thriller, it was a playwright's $1,000 mistake that made a producer $174,000, a stage deal that held Hollywood hostage for 2 years. Alfred Hitchcock's contractual fulfillment shot, with cameras requiring pits dug into soundstage floors, and the first collaboration between a director and a blonde actress who would define suspense cinema, built on a wardrobe argument the 24-year-old actress won. Behind the gleaming scissors and telephone murders lay a production born from Frederick Knott selling his work for peanuts, Alexander Corda's spectacular flip, Broadway's Maurice Evans forcing Warner Brothers to delay their premiere, and a 3D experiment that died so quickly, Philadelphia audiences fled after 4 screenings. What audiences saw as Hitchcock's meticulous craftsmanship was actually filmed theater, giant wooden fingers, Robert Cummings playing second fiddle to his co-stars, and a color-coded costume scheme tracking psychological breakdown through fabric. Today, we're dialing M for secrets, 13 weird facts about Dial M for Murder, and stick around for a bonus fact about the fad Hitchcock knew was doomed before he started filming. Number 13. Knott's $1,000 catastrophe. Frederick Knott wrote Dial M for Murder over 18 months in a cottage next to his parents' Sussex home, submitted it to 7 London producers who all rejected it, and finally sold the television rights to British Broadcasting Corporation for a 90-minute drama slot in 1952. Producer Alexander Corda saw the British Broadcasting Corporation production and immediately recognized cinematic gold. He persuaded the struggling playwright to sell him the film rights for a paltry £1,000, approximately $2,800. Corda flipped those rights to Warner Brothers for £175,000, $75,000 in some accounts, nearly $500,000, a 175-fold profit made in months. Knott, watching Corda pocket a fortune from his work, received nothing additional from the film rights sale. When Hitchcock came aboard and wanted Knott to write the screenplay, the studio paid him just his expenses, according to Knott himself. The playwright who created one of the most successful stage thrillers of the 1950s essentially gave away the film rights for pocket change. The play itself would run for 552 performances on Broadway and be produced in 30 countries within 5 years, making Knott wealthy from theater royalties, but the film fortune went to Corda. When A Perfect Murder remade the story in 1998 with Michael Douglas and Gwyneth Paltrow, Knott again received nothing, as he'd sold away those rights decades earlier. The $1,000 sale became one of theater history's most lopsided deals, a cautionary tale about desperate playwrights and shrewd producers. Number 12. Broadway's hostage situation. Warner Brothers owned the film rights and had Hitchcock ready to direct, but they couldn't release the movie. Broadway held them hostage. When Alexander Corda sold the rights to Warner, he included a stipulation that all staged versions must close before the film's release. Actor Maurice Evans wanted to star in a Broadway production, but that clause made producers leery of backing the show, fearing it would be shut down immediately when the studio wanted to release their film. Evans negotiated a brilliant compromise. Corda would receive 2% of the gross from the Broadway production in exchange for postponing the screen version until fall 1954. The play opened in October 1952 at the Plymouth Theatre. For nearly 2 years, Warner Brothers sat on a completed Hitchcock film, watching Broadway make money while their print gathered dust. An April 1954 Daily Variety news item reported that Warner Brothers was forced to postpone multiple city press previews because the Broadway show was still running. The film finally premiered in late May 1954, but by then, the 3D fad had collapsed. The studio's forced delay meant they missed the 3D boom entirely, releasing their stereoscopic spectacle to audiences who no longer cared. Broadway's ransom turned Hitchcock's commercial thriller into a dated gimmick, the contract clause costing Warner millions in lost 3D ticket sales. Number 11. Kelly's first Hitchcock role. Dial M for Murder marked Grace Kelly's first collaboration with Alfred Hitchcock, launching a partnership that would produce Rear Window, 1954, and To Catch a Thief, 1955. Kelly was loaned from Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer for the production, and critics later labeled her the quintessential Hitchcock blonde. But Kelly wasn't passive material for Hitchcock's obsessions. She challenged him from day one, winning a costume argument that established her as his intellectual equal. The murder scene called for Kelly to wear an elaborate red velvet robe Hitchcock had specifically designed. Kelly refused, arguing no woman home alone would put on a fancy robe to answer a midnight phone call. Hitchcock asked what she'd wear instead. "I wouldn't put on anything at all, that I'd just get up and go to the phone in my nightgown," Kelly replied. Hitchcock admitted she was right and changed the costume to a pale blue and white lace nightgown. This 24-year-old actress, in her debut Hitchcock film, had successfully challenged the master of suspense's aesthetic vision using simple logic. Hitchcock respected her for it, later describing Kelly as a rare thing in movies, fit for any leading lady part, and admitting he had his easiest working relationship with her. The nightgown became iconic precisely because Kelly understood character truth better than visual spectacle. This early victory established a dynamic where Hitchcock trusted Kelly's instincts, creating a collaborative partnership rather than the director-dominated relationships that characterized his later work with blondes who couldn't push back. Number 10. Cummings cast from prior film. Robert Cummings, who played Mark Halliday, had previously starred in Hitchcock's 1942 film Saboteur. 12 years separated the two collaborations, and in that time Cummings hadn't become spectacularly telegenic, as one critic noted. When stacked against Ray Milland's Oscar-winning charisma and Grace Kelly's luminous screen presence, Cummings appeared bland and lightweight, exactly what his underwritten character required. The screenplay gives Mark Halliday almost no development beyond American crime writer and Margot's former lover. Cummings' performance is entirely reactive, his role mostly standing around looking concerned while Milland and Kelly command scenes. Critics unanimously praised Milland, Kelly, and John Williams while describing Cummings as miscast, a mystery to me, and exuding a campy, if lightweight vibe. But Hitchcock knew what he was doing. Mark exists as a plot device, not a character. Cummings's blandness serves the story by making audiences focus on Milland's villainy and Kelly's victimhood rather than the love triangle. If Mark were charismatic or compelling, he'd distract from the central murder plot. Hitchcock cast Cummings precisely because he was forgettable, using the actor's limitations as a feature rather than fighting against them. In a film of intensely theatrical performances, Cummings provides neutral space, the cinematic equivalent of white noise against which the real drama can play out. Number 9. Williams and Dawson's stage roles. English actor John Williams and Anthony Dawson reprised their Broadway roles for the film, Williams as Chief Inspector Hubbard and Dawson as the would-be killer swan Captain Lesgate. Williams had won the 1953 Tony Award for Best Featured Actor in a Play for the Hubbard role, vindicating Warner Brothers' decision to cast theater actors rather than movie stars in supporting roles. Dial M for Murder marked Williams' film debut, and his dry, sardonic detective became the film's secret weapon. He delivers exposition, heavy dialogue with such natural wit that viewers barely notice they're being fed crucial plot information. Dawson's shifty swan brought stage, honed precision that grounds the fantastic murder plot in believable criminality. Both actors understood how to make dialogue, heavy scenes compelling through subtle inflection and timing rather than physical action. Their theatrical training served Hitchcock's filmed, stage, play approach perfectly, anchoring the fantastic plot with professional gravitas. Williams' performance led to similar roles throughout his career, including another Scotland Yard inspector in Midnight Lace, 1960. J. Pat O'Malley later replaced Williams as Hubbard in stage productions, but Williams' film performance remains definitive. His Inspector Hubbard is crusty, paternal, and exists only in movies, a fantasy detective who methodically unravels Tony's scheme through patient observation rather than dramatic confrontation. Number 8. Burks's 3D experience. Cinematographer Robert Burks reunited with Hitchcock for Dial M for Murder after shooting all of the director's American films in the 1950s. Crucially, Burks had experience with 3D, having shot Hondo, 1953, and worked uncredited on House of Wax the same year. This expertise made him invaluable when Warner Brothers forced Hitchcock to use their all-media camera system. The bulky 3D camera made even simple shots complicated, requiring technical innovation for basic coverage. Burke's previous 3D work meant he understood the format's limitations and possibilities, helping Hitchcock navigate stereoscopic challenges without sacrificing visual storytelling. The overhead shot of Tony explaining his murder plot to Swan, one of the film's most famous images, required precise 3D depth staging that Burks executed flawlessly. His cinematography earned universal praise from critics, with Bosley Crowther of the New York Times calling the film a technical triumph. Burke's lighting created shadows and streaks that enhanced both 2D and 3D presentations, ensuring the film worked regardless of projection format. This versatility proved prescient when the film played almost entirely in flat 2D after Philadelphia audiences rejected 3D. Burke's collaboration with Hitchcock continued through 10 more films, including Rear Window, To Catch a Thief, Vertigo, and The Birds, establishing him as Hitchcock's primary visual collaborator during the director's greatest period. Number 7. Tiomkin's restrained score. Composer Dmitri Tiomkin, who had scored numerous westerns and epics, created a remarkably restrained score for Dial M for Murder. Film critics praised Tiomkin for knowing when to tell his violins and trumpets to shut up, allowing dialogue and action to carry scenes without musical manipulation. This discipline was essential for filmed theater. Scoring would have exposed the staginess rather than enhancing the tension. Tiomkin's music appears sparingly, providing emotional support during crucial moments. The murder attempt, Margot's trial montage, the final revelation, but receding completely during dialogue, heavy exposition. The restraint demonstrates sophistication rare in 1950s film scoring, where composers typically filled every moment with orchestral emphasis. One reviewer noted Tiomkin hits all the right notes, meaning he understood when silence served the suspense better than music. The score never tells audiences how to feel, instead amplifying what's already on screen. This approach perfectly suited Hitchcock's preference for minimal scoring, letting visual storytelling and performance carry emotional weight. Tiomkin's work earned no awards but received critical recognition for its intelligence. The composer, better known for bombastic Western themes like High Noon's Do Not Forsake Me, proved he could serve intimate chamber drama with the same professionalism he brought to epic landscapes. Number 6. Color Costume Psychology. Hitchcock and costume designer Moss Mabry collaborated on an elaborate color experiment tracking Margot's psychological deterioration through wardrobe. The film opens with Kelly in whites and bright reds, a white morning dress while reading newspapers, then a stunning red evening gown kissing Mark. These vibrant colors suggest happiness, passion, vitality. As Tony's murder plot unfolds, the palette shifts toward muted tones. After the attack, Margot's costumes become conservative blues, grays, browns, subdued colors reflecting her trauma and the criminal prosecution she faces. The final scenes show her in somber, almost mourning, like a tire, visually representing psychological imprisonment even before actual conviction. The red dress becomes particularly iconic, a splash of passion and danger in the confined, neutral, toned apartment. Hitchcock explained, "I dressed her in very gay and bright colors at the beginning of the picture, and as the plot thickened, her clothes became gradually more somber." This sophisticated use of color psychology demonstrates Hitchcock's mastery of visual storytelling. He didn't need dialogue to show Margot's emotional state when costumes communicated it instantly. The color progression creates a visual narrative running parallel to the plot, audiences unconsciously registering Margot's descent through increasingly drab clothing, even if they can't articulate why the later scenes feel heavier and more oppressive than the bright opening. Number 5. The claustrophobic strategy. Hitchcock deliberately kept the film confined almost entirely to the Wendy's apartment, resisting Hollywood's traditional instinct to open up stage plays for cinema. According to film scholar David Bordwell's analysis, approximately 94% of the running time occurs inside the apartment, with only brief shots involving Inspector Hubbard taking place elsewhere. Hitchcock explained his philosophy to Francois Truffaut. Many filmmakers would take a stage play and say, "I'm going to make this into a film." Then they would begin to open it up, but I think that's wrong. When you have something that's confined and you try to expand it, you just lose the quality that made it special in the first place. Hitchcock wanted claustrophobia, wanted viewers trapped in the apartment with Margot, experiencing the same spatial imprisonment the characters endure. The room setting becomes a pressure cooker, intensifying tension precisely because there's no escape, no release, no exterior relief. This disciplined restraint makes Dial M for Murder feel more like filmed theater than most Hitchcock works, but creates unique suspense. We're locked in the room where terrible things will happen, unable to look away. The strategy works because Hitchcock understands that limitation breeds creativity, that confining space focuses dramatic energy rather than dissipating it across multiple locations. Number 4. Corda's broadcast rights clause. When Alexander Corda purchased the rights from Frederick Knott and resold them to Warner Brothers, he included a complex stipulation. Staged versions must close before the film's release, and the screen version had to be postponed until fall 1954 to allow the Broadway production its full run. This clause created a cascading series of problems that shaped the film's troubled release. Maurice Evans, starring in the Broadway production, benefited enormously from this arrangement. His show ran 552 performances without competition from a film version. Corda collected 2% of the Broadway gross as compensation for delaying the movie, essentially getting paid twice, once by Warner for the film rights, again by Broadway for the postponement. Warner Brothers was trapped by a contract they'd signed without fully understanding its implications. When they tried to schedule press previews in April 1954, they discovered the Broadway show was still running and were forced to postpone their marketing campaign. The film finally premiered May 29, 1954, months after the 3D craze had peaked and begun its catastrophic collapse. Corda's clause, brilliant for Corda and Broadway, proved disastrous for Warner, who watched their expensive 3D production become dated before most audiences could see it. The contract that made Corda rich made Warner regret buying the property at all. Number 3. Knott's 7 rejections. Before the British Broadcasting Corporation accepted Dial M for Murder for Television, Frederick Knott endured 7 rejections from London producers who couldn't see the play's potential. These weren't polite declines. One producer, August MacLeod, was superbly confident that the play as a whole would cause little interest. 7 times Knott heard his 18-month labor dismissed as uncommercial, talky, stagey, and unlikely to attract audiences. Knott was about to abandon the project entirely when the British Broadcasting Corporation offered to produce it as a 90-minute television play in 1952. That broadcast enthralled audiences and caught Alexander Corda's attention, changing Knott's life forever. The 7 rejections demonstrate how spectacularly wrong supposed experts can be about commercial potential. The play that would cause little interest ran 552 performances on Broadway, played in 30 countries within 5 years, became a Hitchcock film, inspired multiple remakes, and remains a standard of summer stock and school productions 7 decades later. Knott's experience vindicated every rejected playwright who kept believing when professionals said no. The 7 producers who passed on Dial M for Murder watched it become one of the most successful stage thrillers in history, their names forgotten while Knott's creation endures. Sometimes the worst professional decision is listening to professionals who claim to know what audiences want. Number 2. The Philadelphia Death Sentence. After one preview performance on May 18th and 4 showings on May 19th, 1954, a Philadelphia theater manager frantically contacted Warner Brothers reporting catastrophic audience rejection. People weren't just disliking the 3D version, they were staying away in droves, actively avoiding the film. The manager begged permission to drop the 3D presentation and show it flat. The Philadelphia Inquirer reported May 23rd that first audiences proved to be a jury that could not only make up its mind, but could make it up in a hurry. In exhibitors' own terms, DILM literally died. This immediate commercial death sentence happened because the 3D fad had evaporated with stunning speed. The dual, strip, polarized system was difficult and error, prone for projectionists, requiring perfect synchronization of 2 separate film strips and precise alignment of polarizing filters. One mistake meant audiences seeing double images, headache, inducing blurriness, or complete visual chaos. Theater owners hated dealing with the equipment. After just 4 catastrophic screenings, Warner Brothers surrendered and released the film in standard 2D across most of the country, where it performed respectably, earning an estimated $2,700,000 at the North American box office. Modest but not disastrous. The Philadelphia rejection became shorthand for 3D's collapse, the moment when novelty-driven exhibition died and practical reality returned. Hitchcock's prediction that it would be more widely seen as a flatty proved devastatingly accurate, vindicating his skepticism while exposing Warner's foolishness for forcing the format. Number 1. Hitchcock's cameo in photograph. Alfred Hitchcock's signature cameo in Dial M for Murder occurs 13 minutes into the film as a static photograph rather than his usual walk-through appearance. He appears in a black and white reunion photograph. Tony shows Captain Lesgate, a banquet table image of former Cambridge University students and faculty. Hitchcock sits at the table among reunion attendees, frozen in a still image rather than moving through the frame. This photographic cameo represents Hitchcock's most minimal appearance in any of his films. Because the entire movie is confined to the apartment with few characters, there was no opportunity for his traditional walk-by in a street scene or public place. The photograph solution allowed him to maintain his signature tradition while respecting the story's claustrophobic limitations. It's perfectly appropriate for a film about examining evidence. Tony's murder plot revolves around physical evidence, and Inspector Hubbard solves the case by carefully observing details others miss. Hitchcock hiding in a photograph comments on the film's themes of seeing and not seeing, of evidence hiding in plain sight. Most viewers miss the cameo entirely on first viewing because they're focused on dialogue and plot rather than scrutinizing background details. This makes discovering it on repeat viewings a delightful Easter egg. The master of suspense literally hidden in the background of his most photographically confined film watching everything unfold from inside a frame within the frame, a ghost observing his own creation. Number 0, Hitchcock's 9-Day Wonder. It's a 9-day wonder, and I came in on the 9th day. Hitchcock's famous dismissal of 3D technology perfectly captured both the fad's brevity and his own terrible timing. Warner Brothers forced him to use 3D in 1953 after House of Wax became a massive hit, but the format's popularity lasted approximately 1 year, spring 1953 to spring 1954. Hitchcock entered production in summer 1953, right as the wave crested, and released in May 1954, after it had crashed. The quote became Hitchcock's standard response whenever asked about 3D. He recognized that the technology's brief popularity was driven by novelty rather than artistic value, and that technical difficulties doomed it to failure. The fad lasted approximately 1 year. His prediction that Dial M for Murder would play primarily in 2D proved correct. The film earned respectable box office almost entirely from flat screenings. Hitchcock never worked in 3D again, and his disdain for the format influenced other serious filmmakers to avoid it for decades. The 9-Day Wonder quote endured as Hollywood's shorthand for any technological gimmick prioritizing spectacle over storytelling. The irony is perfect. In February 1980, the York Theater in San Francisco revived Dial M for Murder in 3D using the dual strip system, and it performed so well that Warner Brothers conducted a limited national re-release in February 1982. The 1980 screenings revealed the film's sophisticated depth staging, the scissors murder scene, the overhead shots, the layered compositions, all created genuinely effective 3D when properly projected. The problem in 1954 wasn't Hitchcock's use of the format, but projectionists' inability to maintain synchronized dual strips. Warner Brothers released it as a 3D Blu-ray in October 2012, making Hitchcock's stereoscopic experiment finally accessible to home viewers 58 years after creation. The film Hitchcock made cynically on a fad's 9th day became a cult favorite precisely because of the 3D he considered pointless. Dial M for Murder endures not because anyone genuinely wanted it, but because professionals executing contractual obligations with maximum skill created accidental excellence. Its legacy is that of the perfect mercenary work, a film made for money that achieved art through sheer craftsmanship, proving that bored masters still outperform enthusiastic amateurs. The darkness behind its creation, Knott's $1,000 mistake, Corda's spectacular flip, Broadway's hostage deal, the Philadelphia death sentence, the doomed 3D format, makes its achievement more remarkable. A film born from bad deals and worse timing somehow became a classic, precisely because Hitchcock, Kelly, Burks, Williams, and Dawson refused to phone it in despite every reason to treat it as disposable work. They brought professionalism to a project nobody believed in, creating something that outlived the fad, outlasted the Broadway show, and proved that contracted drudgery in expert hands produces better results than passionate incompetence. Knott sold his masterpiece for peanuts, but lived comfortably on theater royalties for decades. Corda made a fortune flipping rights. Warner lost millions on 3D, but earned respectability from Hitchcock's craftsmanship. Kelly established herself as Hitchcock's intellectual equal, and audiences got a thriller that works in any format because the story, performances, and visual storytelling transcend the technology meant to sell it.